Good morning, Wabash. Today speaking at Pioneer Chapel is Anthony Douglas II with his talk entitled, Dear Wabash with Love. Anthony Douglas II is a proud Wabash alumnus, class of 2017. He is a fourth-year medical student at IU School of Medicine, applying this fall for general surgery residency. During his time in medical school, he has been heavily involved in research and publications. He has received merit scholarships through the IU School of Medicine and recently was appointed to Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Medical Society. During his time at Wabash, Anthony was a member of Malcolm X Institute of Black Studies, Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse, Phi Beta Kappa, Sons of Wabash, the Sphinx Club, and a lifetime member of the Omega Phi Psi Fraternity Incorporated. He majored in psychology with a minor in biology and chemistry. Originally from South Bend, Indiana, Anthony is the son of Rachel and Anthony Douglas Sr. and brother to Paige Douglas. Anthony aspires to continue his training and residency with hopes to become a board-certified acute care trauma critical care surgeon. In addition, he plans to be an activist in his community, encouraging other young men and women to pursue careers in the STEM field and active in violence prevention. Please join me in welcoming Anthony Douglas II.
Good morning, Wabash. Before I begin, I want to thank God for blessing me with this opportunity. Thank you to my parents for their undying love and support. Special thanks to Dean Jones and the Sphinx Club for organizing this opportunity for me to speak with you all this morning. It has been way too long. I believe the last time I was on campus was graduation 2017, which we can blame medical school for that. Nonetheless, I missed all the friendly faces I was accustomed to seeing, all the spontaneous conversations with administrators, professors, mentors, and peers. The days of Johnny P's Pizza and enjoying the delicacy that is Buffalo Wild Wings. I always share with people who ask me about my time at Wabash that it is one of the few places where it's difficult to find anyone who does not love working here. I want to thank you for welcoming me home. It's a privilege to have the attention of the greatest thinkers in the world. I used to imagine what I would say if I ever had this opportunity when I was a student. Certainly, I never thought it would be under these circumstances. When I began to brainstorm about what I wanted to share with you all today, I started to reflect on my most memorable chapel talks as a student. Those that were most impactful to me were chapel talks that challenged you, sparked further conversation, and of course, included a sprinkle of Wabash propaganda. It is my hope to replicate that today. I may say some things you may agree or disagree with, or things that may make you uncomfortable. Ultimately, I hope that you find that this was worth 15 to 20 minutes of your time. As a student, I always view Wabash like the Big Apple, full of opportunities and space to grow as a young man. I tried to find any and every way I could immerse myself in everything Wabash had to offer. As a freshman, participating in chapel scene, becoming a member of the Malcolm X Institute of Black Studies, and working in admissions. I was the less desired admissions employee compared to the more well-known Anthony Douglas, my father, who during my Wabash course spent 4 of my 4 years bringing young men from South Bend to our hidden gem. He fell in love with Wabash long before I had the chance to develop my sentiments. The following year, I got one of the most impactful experiences of my career at Wabash with the Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse Initiative as a Democracy Fellow, and not long after that, became a member of the Sphinx Club and Sons of Wabash. Being intentional about my involvement at Wabash taught me how to be disciplined in my studies and how to compartmentalize my responsibilities to be effective in and outside the classroom. What I am getting at is, your experience at Wabash is what you make of it. Get out of your house or your dorm, create or get involved in what interests you. Attend guest lecture series. Not only will you enjoy and get the most out of your experience, but you will find it will facilitate your professional development as well. So many relationships I hold dear to this day with my professors and mentors at Wabash, which I will not name because I will inevitably leave someone out that means a lot to me. And I apologize for doing a poor job of keeping in touch. Those relationships with your teachers and peers are a part of what makes Wabash so special. The village you create in your 4 years that gets you through the rigor of your curriculum. Academically, Wabash is challenging, but it prepares you for the work ethic and discipline that will be required after graduation. The world needs Wabash College. There are so many threats to our livelihood daily: climate change, famine, poverty, gun violence, racial injustices, genocide, what's currently happening in Nigeria with SARS, and not to mention COVID-19. Hints of the end days in conversations and on media platforms, it is becoming harder and harder to find hope in this world we have created. These are terrifying times. The thoughts and fear of death and how we want to live or be remembered are ever present on our mind. What I have found is the silver lining in all that is happening in the world is how these tribulations have required national and global self-reflection, reflecting on things we've taken for granted, recognizing how unnecessarily complicated we have made life, and how important the simple things have become. I personally have found myself saying yes to more opportunities to spend time with my loved ones, making less excuses to choose work over recreation. The brutal honesty and self-reflection, I believe, is one of the most beneficial things that has came out of the trials we're enduring. The African American community is no stranger to the trials that plague the world, because often we as a community are the bearers and victims of its brutality. Disproportionately affected by the system of capitalism, which required our lives and free labor for over 400 years. Disproportionately the victims of mass incarceration and COVID-19 deaths. Then there is the denial of self-determination through our lack of access to quality public education, health care, housing, and food. And then, of course, are the unlawful killings of African Americans at the hands of law enforcement. Sadly, not much has truly changed for us. It is difficult to thrive in this world, but to thrive as a person of color today at times seems to be nearly impossible. Lately, I have struggled to endure the constant micro-trauma of watching people who look like me murdered, and the constant reminder that in America, we have implicitly and explicitly been relegated to second-class citizenship. Some days, I even delete my social media accounts and unplug from the TV just to maintain my sanity for the day. As a black medical student, it is tough as well. Consciously and unconsciously feeling the obligation to advocate for patients of color, and oftentimes being requested by patients of color to advocate for them. I remember vividly this summer an African American woman begging me, the medical student, amongst a plethora of healthcare professionals in the room, not to leave her in the trauma bay alone because she was scared of not her injuries, but what could happen to her in the hospital. And given the medical field's history and the healthcare disparities that exist within the African American community, it is hard not to recognize the validity in her fear. As I apply for jobs, I have to consider whether the environment I'm entering in is somewhere I can just be and exist as who I am, a place where I am not tolerated as the token, but accepted as an addition to a pre-existing diverse team. The constant reminder that as an African American man, I must be twice as good as my majority counterparts, and the awareness that my errors are taken a lot more seriously and more reflective of my competence than my peers. James Baldwin said it best: to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be enraged almost all the time. Unfortunately, Wabash is not isolated or exempt from the social justice issues the country is facing. The unique camaraderie and unparalleled brotherhood that exists at our institution, not all of Wabash's sons experience. As active and invested in the culture as I was during my time at Wabash, I still encountered prejudice and insensitive moments where I did not feel included. By my own Wabash brothers, I was referred to as a monkey, told that the only reason I was accepted into medical school was because of the color of my skin, and mocked for stereotypes that have been associated with people of my skin tone. Part of the problem, I think, is we encourage young men, many of whom come from rural Indiana or communities where they have never interacted with people of color, to join fraternities immediately in their Wabash career and isolate themselves with other men who come from very similar backgrounds, and then spend 4 years with each other with very few meaningful opportunities to learn and interact with people who do not look like them or don't come from the same environment as them. Therefore, it is no surprise that some students of color can attest to experiences where they heard insensitive comments or been the target of racial slurs. We struggle engaging some students of color in the culture and traditions of our beautiful institution, because many of which are ingrained in the predominantly white fraternal atmosphere of Wabash. I say these things with love, not out of spite. I love my alma mater. It has given me some of the best years of my life and helped groom me into the man I am today. Wabash is not alone in this room for progress towards diversity and inclusion. Down the street at IU this fall semester, during the NAACP student call-out Zoom meeting, individuals filled the Zoom meeting with racial slurs and pornographic imagery. Even at the School of Medicine, we had similar events. If this were any other institution, I do not believe I will waste the time to share these things with you. But I truly believe if there's any institution adaptable, capable of change, and able to lead by example, it is Wabash. A word to my fellow Wabash men: change happens individually. As you search for ways to advocate for your fellow Wabash brothers, it begins with self-education, reading to gain knowledge and understanding of what the experience is like for us. Step outside your comfort zone. Seek opportunities to interact with people who do not look like you. Ask questions and speak up. Your outcry for racial equity is equally as powerful as your silence. Recognize how your privilege shapes your interpretation of current social events. If you are quicker to condemn the actions of protesters and rioters before the actions of police officers, well, then you have failed to empathize with those most hurt and succumb to the privilege of not knowing what it is like to be stopped by police as a black man, or what it's like to be black in general, and all the social implications that come with it. This world rewards those who are most adaptable. Our world is changing, and you are entering fields where people will look less and less like you, gender and color. Your ability to relate and understand those you work with and for will be essential. To my fellow Wabash men of color, I understand how exhausting it is to be conscious of the color of your skin every second of the day and in every interaction. At the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, it is not your burden to carry to educate the masses, represent, or speak on behalf of your race. Choose your battles. Your presence alone is impactful, and your achievements encourage those who look up to you and see themselves in you to achieve the same. I know this because I recall one of my Caucasian Wabash brothers approaching me during our last days on campus. And he shared with me how he appreciated my patience in all of our occasionally intense debates about race, and how after 4 years together, he understands and sees things differently. Lastly, take advantage of all the opportunities this institution offers you. This is truly a special place. The world needs us, Wabash. It needs stability in its leaders, those who are selfless and empathetic. Those type of leaders we breed here at Wabash. Those who truly exemplify what it means to think critically, act responsibly, lead effectively, and live humanely. Those who seek to understand rather than seek agreeance. One of the biggest takeaways I learned from my 3 years as a democracy fellow in the Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse Initiative under Dr. Sarah Drury's leadership and mentorship. We exhaust so much energy mentally and emotionally to convict others to agree with our values and politics, instead of considering how their experiences shape the foundation from which their choices and ideals come from. It was this mentality I developed in WDPD, which allowed me to be at peace when a mentor and father figure in my life told me he supported Trump. Although I wholeheartedly disagree with his political views, I did my best to understand why his experiences would lead him to support Trump for the sake of our relationship. If the world approaches conflicts in this manner, maybe, just maybe, we will finally come closer to know what it means to love one another. Keep this in mind during the next email war or intense debates around the lunch table. The world needs the Wabash leaders whose instincts are first to understand rather than despise, who choose to love rather than hate. It is this which has allowed me to give the same quality of care to the patient with the Aryan Brotherhood tattoos as the black patient. The beauty of a career in medicine, especially in trauma surgery, is unlike many of the patients we encounter, we as doctors have the ability to choose how we want to live. The patients we treat are the most acutely ill and the closest to death. As a physician, the privilege to take care of these people comes with a great deal of reflection and the knowledge of how fragile life is. It is this knowledge that is ever present on our mind that reminds us that every day we have the opportunity to impact our world. As I close, I hope that you will find more time to enjoy the simple things in life and find more excuses to love and understand one another. I hope that you found my thoughts today worth listening to. Thank you for this opportunity. With love, Wabash always fights.